Hey, welcome everyone. Today, more than ever, the world needs voices that spark change, ignite hope, and drive transformation. Change doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when individuals choose to step forward, speak up, and take bold action. Whether you're leading a global movement or making a difference in your own community, your voice has power. In this podcast, we aim to amplify those voices, share the journeys of resilient change makers, and inspire each of you to recognize your potential to impact the world. Let's create a ripple effect together. This message taps into the concept of collective empowerment, emphasizes the significance of individual contributions in driving social change. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Riches. Today, with our guests, James and Amanda, we are going to be talking about delivering from the dark arts. And I think you guys want to stick around and listen to this whole show because it's really going to be a really good one. So, James, Amanda, guys, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting us.
Course, thank
Absolutely.
you.
And before I forget, I always like to say thank you to the people that introduce me to other individuals. So I just want to shout out and say to Brigham, thank you so much, buddy, for introducing us. And my mom's cat is over here meowing. Hopefully, the cat won't be bugging us too much. But again, Brigham, thank you so much for connecting us. Greatly appreciate it. So I was reading both your guys' bios, and your bios were amazing. My gosh, the both of you have gone through a lot of stuff, especially at a very, very early age. So I don't know if it's you, Amanda. I mean, ladies first, if you'd like to go first. If you're not comfortable with it, we can let James go. But share a little bit of your journey so our listeners understand where you came from.
So I've been raised as an only child. Um, my dad passed away when I was really young. So that left my mom to raise me by herself. And after he passed, we moved closer to my grandparents so they can help out a little bit. And I know my mom ended up getting lost within raising me and grief, and she ended up turning to drugs herself. And that turned my life into me having to be very independent and me dealing with school all by myself, and why she was dealing with her own things and ended up smoking and drinking at about 13 years old and kind of spiraled downhill or just into continued use over my age, and ended up meeting um, just my ex that I ended up being in a abusive relationship with for about 6 years. And in the mix of our relationship, I ended up starting using because he was using. And after that, I know I got a charge, an assault charge, being in that relationship. And later I was later I was sentenced to ComCore, which gave me a new start to life. Within that, I was able to meet James. And
So Comcore, is that like for here in Salt Lake they have drug court? Is that kind of like the same type of thing?
not really, or it could be. So ComCore is a step down from going to prison. It's an in-facility um, place that you can get sentenced to, and so you can come and go to be able to go to work or to classes and have passes, but you have to always come back to the building at the end of every day and be able to do your time that way.
Okay. Yeah, so it kind of sounds like a little bit about the same thing because I think drug court is about this the same where you can kind of come and go and you can hold a job, but however, you still have to go through this program to keep yourself out
Mhm.
going to prison. Okay, got it. And so with you, Amanda, going off in your journey, I mean, was it because you was like following your mom, or was it because also the pain and the trauma of losing your dad, and then also seeing the pain and trauma that your mom was going through?
I guess, yeah, it could have been for that to like be able to self-soothe with the different traumas or the different losses in my life. But I know before I started drugs, it was kind of an accusation that I was already using. And then I kind of went at it to be like, well, okay, if you're going to accuse me of this, why not just do it? And then also when I was within that same time of me becoming or getting into my relationship with my ex, we had gotten evicted from our apartment, and that was just at age 16. So I pretty much had to go fend for myself, and my family had left me to be taken care of by my ex instead of being able to help me. I had to figure out things, and just since it was always around or growing up with it around, and then being able using with my ex-partner, it just became precedent in life.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And both you guys it was an early age. I mean, yours all started like around 13 as well, right, James?
Yes.
Yeah. You want to share a little bit of your beginning as well?
So my beginning, I was born in Pueblo, Colorado, adopted at the age of 3. Um, there's a lot of, I guess, mystery around my adoption circumstances, but childhood was absolutely amazing. Um, I guess the traumas of my very young childhood played out over time once I hit my adolescent ages, which is when I started drinking, smoking tobacco, and marijuana at the age of 13. Pardon me. And uh, I got in a lot of fights and stuff at school with displaced anger, not knowing how to deal with everything. Which eventually led to me dropping out of high school and moving out of my parents' house at 16. That's when I started getting involved in heavier drugs like methamphetamines. Then from there, I ended up going to a troubled youth facility, private at school, reform style in Utah, where I spent about 22 months. Um, it didn't have to be 22 months. There was no set time for me to be there. I was fighting against the system when I got in there. And so that part alone took a good 14 months or so of my time in the program while I was just kind of figuring things out for myself. Finished the program after I turned 18 and went back up to Denver when I started making mistakes in life again and bad choices, where things really just took off in a dark direction for me. The darkness originally set in at 14, which was a point that I started doing rituals and seances um, in efforts to make contact, I guess you could say, with the devil very directly. At which point, I'd also made a decision essentially to sell my soul to the devil, um, figuring, okay, well, it'll give me whatever it is that I need, the strength, the power to overcome any adversaries. Uh, it was a very young and foolish decision that I'd made that would had ended up impacting about 22 years of my life. Um, it led me through a period of times riddled with alcoholism, a couple of different relapses into drugs that came quite a bit later, a marriage of 15 years that turned out to be extremely toxic, um, led me to a point almost, well, to a point of suicide. I tried to hang myself at one point in my backyard. And then that was also the same point that I'd ended up finding a relapse that lasted for almost 2 years with methamphetamines that also shortly after the meth came back included using heroin and fentanyl as well. Um, at that point, I was using just about any drug I could get my hands on, but meth, heroin, and fentanyl were the major uh, drugs that I was using at the time. And finally, I hit a point where I realized what I was doing as far as showing my kids things that I was not okay with. Essentially, I showed them that it was okay to do drugs and completely fly off the rail. And so I'd gotten arrested, and while I was in jail for that last time, I realized that I could no longer just say that I was sorry. I could no longer tell my children that I apologized to them for my behavior and for being a poor father and a poor example of what an adult is. I had to show them. So I had committed myself to rehab for 30 days, where that started my recovery journey that lasted almost 2 years. About 6 months in was when I realized it was time for a divorce. And that went very smoothly at first. About a year after starting the divorce, that was when I had another relapse with methamphetamines. And that part definitely took a bigger spiral for me. It had not only myself involved, but at that time I'd been in a relationship with Amanda for about a year as well. And I started seeing the danger that I was putting her in. Um, I wasn't used to being in dangerous situations with other people involved that I care about. You know, even during my relapse before the marriage ended, nobody was really in any danger there. My family didn't seem like there was anybody there causing any danger to them besides myself. Um, During this last relapse, however, I had Amanda right by my side at all times, and I started realizing what kind of people I was allowing to hang around us, and what kinds of things they did started filtering into me through the grapevine. And once we started getting into more legal trouble again, it became a lot more clear to me. Not only were we getting in legal trouble, but there was a very direct threat, not necessarily on our lives, but on our well-being. Um, it looked as though we were both being set up for absolute uh, failure. You know, not just by our own choices, but other people going out of their way to try and bring down what to them seemed to look like a fortress. Everywhere we went, people talked about how connected Amanda and I are and how strong our relationship looks. Well, in the drug world, a lot of times we see that become a target of, well, let's see if we can break this bond. Not only if we can break it, but how badly we can break it. And at that point, when I finally realized that, Amanda was getting arrested for her last time, and I was starting to receive what I refer to as my time of revelation. I was able to go through everything in my mind, and I could hear my mom's voice in the back of my head telling me how disappointed she was. I could hear all the good times that we'd had driving around, just loving life, echoing through my mind. And all of that was getting ready to just come crashing down. You know, everything was closing in very rapidly. And if we managed to get out of any of that without any jail time at all, would be nothing shy of a miracle. Um, so as Amanda started getting hauled off, I had a choice to either go to the hospital or just walk myself into town. So, or see if somebody could pick me up. Well, I didn't trust anybody out in that area at the time. And I kind of realized that maybe I needed to have a discussion with myself and with God about what I'm doing with my life, what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and also what I had allowed myself to contribute to the life of somebody I cared about very deeply. So instead of going to the hospital, I chose to walk. And I refer to it very fondly as my walk with God. Um, the officers and the paramedics had told me that I don't need to punish myself for everything. And that was the very first time in my life I actually wasn't doing anything out of self punishment or self destruction or self sabotage. I wanted something different. I wanted something better. And I didn't feel like I deserved it. In fact, I knew in the deepest part of my heart I didn't deserve anything better, or so I thought. But Amanda did. I told Amanda when we first met that she's an angel. And with some of the places I'd gone in my life, some of the spiritual experiences I'd had in my life, not of the positive kind, I know an angel when I see an angel. And for her, I was willing to do whatever I had to do to get her a life that she deserves. And the only way I was able to understand that would be to spend a lot of time walking by myself, thinking, being in absolute isolation. And so I chose to walk with God. It was a 10-mile walk from where the sheriffs had dropped me off until I got back into town, the town of Montrose. Um, Most of that time I actually spent running, and I was not in good shape at all, but there was something pushing me to run. Pain, anger, self-hatred, fear, you know, all things that I never thought that I would have to deal with on that level before. You know, pain for what I'd done, not only to myself, but to Amanda, to my children, even though they weren't around for this relapse, to my mother, who had watched me essentially throw everything away again. Um, to people who actually were friends who knew me during my recovery. And most of all, to the one person who now gets all the credit, God, who had done so much for me even when I didn't want him to.
Yeah. You know, to pause you for a minute, James, I know here in the past 15 years in my journey, how many times God was there for me, and I grew up LDS at the age of 13. I pretty much got out of the church, didn't agree with a lot of the stuff, and I always did believe in God. However, I stopped hitting my knees. I stopped thanking him. You know, I basically wanted to control my whole life. And so many of my guests, including you guys, when we go to control our life, it seems like we just make wrong choice after wrong choice. And so I think it's really, really cool how you put it that God sends angels and he sent you Amanda. Because I've heard other people say that too in shows, that it was a certain individual or somebody that they've never met. I mean, I had a gal who was talking about she got on a bus and this person behind her said, "You need help," and took her to an AA meeting, and she never saw that person ever again. And so we talked about it being the angel on the bus, you know. And so, Amanda, how does that make you feel as hearing what James is saying? That because you were going through your dark times as well and just starting to figure the direction you wanted to go, and then all of a sudden to find this guy that says, "You're my angel, you were sent here to help me." I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I am very grateful and that I'm seen to be that. I've worked or that I'm able to show or be that for him. It's, I guess, an honor. Uh, just from all the negative stuff that I had gone through and where my life had turned, I still had that light left in me. And my light was able to help him shine and help him love himself and know that he could be loved again from the dark times that he had gone through.
Yeah. And it sounds like it switched as well, that you're looking for some love and some connection as well, right? I mean, it's I always find it so amazing how God works with different things. It's so flippin' amazing how, because a lot of times we don't realize it while it's happening until we look back in our life during certain moments where you get those aha moments, and it is so cool to see that. And for me, it's just a huge testament that we have somebody out there that's greater than any of us that helps us in our journey. um, and even with you, James, committing to the dark side. I mean, hearing what you was just sharing, I'm picturing in my head, I'm picturing the opposition just continuously pushing you towards it. Even the times when you were working on going, okay, I got to change my life, where that he kept pushing into a different path, right? No, no, you don't want to go this way. This is the direction that you want to go. And it sounds to me like God never left your side. He knew there was a different plan for you, and sometimes we have to learn our lesson, right? I mean, I say that quite a bit because I know it worked that way for me. Because those times I kept making the wrong choice after wrong choice after wrong choice until I really started paying attention, until I really started listening, is when the whole change actually started happening. And it sounds like it was almost the same for both of you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One of the big things that made helped me realize, you know, that I was never alone, even when I thought I was shortly after I'd done my final seance to go shake the devil's hand. I ended up getting in a car accident at 14 years old, running away. I'd stole my parents' car. And during the car accident, there was a warmth that wrapped around me and a voice that was familiar, but I'd never actually heard it in person before. And all it said was, "You're going to be okay." And I've told many people this throughout the years, you know, and certain family members would just say, well, that's what happens sometimes when you have a near-death experience. Or some family members would say, oh, well, this is your ancestor who's passed on. And, I take all of it into consideration. Well, one day, and this was before actually coming to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I was at a different church and a song called Pour It Out came on. And I just broke down, uncontrollably crying, sobbing. I had to go to the back of the church, where I actually ha- had felt like I had no choice but to get on my knees and bow down. And while I was bowing down that time, I was given a vision that the warmth I felt was the robes of Christ, and a body was put into that vision in front of me that had wrapped around me in the seat to take the glass that had shattered from every window in the vehicle. There were tree branches from the trees being shoved into the windows of the car as I was spinning through the air. And all came out with from the car accident was 2 scratches. And that I understood after I had that vision how that happened. Because not only did Christ put himself on the cross to pay for my sins, but even in that moment on that day, he had sacrificed himself again for me. And that was when I finally decided, okay, I need to seek this out. There's a thanks that I owe to this. And that was when things truly started to become clear to me what we were going through, even though our addiction had continued for another 2 weeks before I finally was able to get my foot in the door that stuck.
Yeah. My gosh. I'm sitting over here on the other side of the screen here, literally with goosebumps. And at one moment, my eyes started filling with tears when you said you heard that voice say everything was going to be okay.
Yeah,
Because I had that same thing happen to me on a hike. It was, a really strong point at the time at my ex-wife's depths of her addiction. And I was starting to contemplate taking my life, and because I couldn't handle coming home to what I was coming home to every day. And almost the same thing happened when I went on a hike. It's early, not even spring yet. I went on this 10-mile hike. The snow was extremely deep. I was hiking up to a lake. I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't have the right equipment with me. And before I knew it, I'm looking at the lake and it's all frozen. And what was crazy is the wind was blowing the whole time, about 25, maybe 30 miles an hour, chill in the air. Early March, still lots of snow up in our Wasatch Mountains. And as soon as I hit the crest and sat down, found finally a place to sit down that wasn't covered in snow, all of a sudden the wind just stopped. And I did what happened to you. I literally broke down and started bawling, and I didn't even know why. I'm scanning the scenery, looking at the frozen lake, looking at the snow-covered mountains, and I'm just bawling. Tears are just pouring down my face, and I could not figure out why I was crying. And as soon as I got to my right, a nanosecond, something white standing behind me, just to the side with my peripheral vision, and I just felt a hand hit my shoulder. And as soon as I did, I turned around and nobody was there. I literally felt that hand hit my shoulder, and I heard that same voice. Everything will be okay. It's amazing. It's amazing.
absolutely. And the times when we least think that there's any kind of salvation, if we're looking for direction, if we're looking for something better, we'll be able to notice it when it's there. The biggest part for me that helps in my sustained recovery, I'm almost 8 months,
Yeah, we're almost 8 months.
actually 8 months today,
Yeah,
eight
Oh
months
my gosh,
today.
seriously. Holy cow. Well, congrats to both you guys. That is amazing. That's cool.
thank you.
The biggest thing that helps for me is continuously asking to not only maintain that contact, but for that contact to be maintained with me. It's I choose to honor God and be a member of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Not everybody is going to find their recovery in that. It is important to understand that there are forces of some sort, whatever people choose, to that are greater than us, to seek guidance with, to find direction, to find clarity. Because I, I I know I could never do this on my own. I have so many people that are behind me who walk right by my side, that are constantly encouraging me because I have to stay humble. That's my biggest downfall is my pride. I've made it through a lot of things in my life. I've accomplished a lot of things in my life. I've also lost and screwed up a lot of things in my life. So I have to stay humble. And the best way for me to do that is to seek to serve. How can I help somebody? And when times get hard, especially financially, it gets more difficult to have that spirit of service. It says, okay, well, I got my bills that are due this month. I haven't been working as much. I mean, just over the last 3 weeks, I actually had 2 weeks without any income. And it gets easy to be like, sorry, I can't help right now. I have to focus on work. Well, from what I have experienced is not worrying so much about the tangible things of this life. You know, but worrying more about how I can help other people usually pays off in the long run,
Yeah.
especially if I do it not from a point of greed of saying, I'm doing this so that I can get the blessing, but I'm doing this because it's what's right. Somebody was there, took time out of their day, probably lost some wages so that they can spend time with me. So it's only right and just that I do the same. You know, we we never know when, what, or how we're going to be called to do something. But when that call comes, are we ready to answer? Are we ready to step up? You know, whether that call is putting down the drug, you know, or whether it's going to help somebody on the side of the road, or whether it's just giving some random person a hug.
Yeah. Yeah. It
A
doesn't
lot of
have to
times,
be. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
a lot of times the biggest help that we can be, from what I've learned, is those who we would be least likely to help are the ones who need our help the most. And when we help them, the not only the warmth and the blessings that I get inside, but the universe answers. You know, they the thing of no good deed goes unpunished is so wrong. I have yet to know a good deed that is done with a pure heart that gets punished.
Yeah.
It always has a reward in the long run.
Yeah. There's always a blessing, and it may not be right away, right? It may take some time, and again, your guys' story resonates with mine so flippin' much. I did it in a selfish way. When I knew that if we gave back, God was going to reward us. And I did it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's exactly what I need. Still being the liar and the manipulator and the selfish SOB, the wrong kind of selfishness SOB that I was at the time. Right. So I go out and I start giving myself out to do all these volunteer and do all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, where's my blessings? Right. I'm waiting for them. Nothing was happening. But yet, in a certain amount of time, all of a sudden I find myself enjoying the heck out of what I was doing and feeling the joy and the love and seeing other people's faces and getting the thank yous and the hugs for the time. And I was hurting for money as well, right? Because my ex was in the depth of her addiction. She wasn't working. I decided after losing my job not to go to work for corporate America. I was doing whatever I could to bring money in. I was barely staying afloat, barely. But yet I was giving all this time and I kept finding myself giving more time and more time and more time. And I had even people going, what the heck's wrong with you? You're saying you're broke and you need money, but yet you're going out and you're doing all this crap. I mean, wait till you got money coming in before you go out and start doing this. This is stupid. And I would hear him and I'd go, gosh, you know what? Maybe they're right. But yet something still kept driving me in that direction. And I go back and connect the dots backwards, and our listeners hear me say this a lot. It helped in my journey so freaking much. There was times I didn't know where a car payment was going to come from. There was times I didn't even know where food was coming from. There was times I lived on 2 weeks worth of top ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, somehow groceries seem to show up here and there. Money seemed to come in for this or for that. And it's when my eyes really started opening. I think God started shining that light on me, getting me to go, see, you've been looking at it the wrong way. Now you're starting to look at it the right way and see this is what happens. However, the biggest thing that came out of it was not receiving that. It was the blessings I was receiving from other individuals by going out and doing this stuff.
Yeah, I think especially in early recovery, one of the biggest things that I prayed for and continue to pray for is I'll always ask to have the mind to think the way that my Savior would have me think, to have the eyes to see all the blessings, especially the small ones. And those are the blessings that come from the warmth in the heart, that come from the smile of gratitude from helping somebody. Um, those are the easiest blessings to miss, to take for granted. And those are the ones I don't want to miss, because there was a time in my life where smiles never came. There was a time in my life where I would never get a thank you. I was just expected to do this, to do it very well, and still get ridiculed for even the tiniest thing that wasn't perfect. And so for me, it's very easy to stay grateful for those small things. Um, the other thing would be forgiveness is one of the most important parts of recovery. Forgiveness and gratitude. I had to learn how to forgive myself for everything I've ever done. I had to learn how to accept my own forgiveness. I also had to learn how to accept forgiveness from other people, because it's easy to forgive. It's much more difficult to feel forgiveness, to accept forgiveness from somebody else, because when I accept forgiveness from somebody else, that means that I understand they are no longer going to hold that against me. I also understand that I no longer need to hold it against myself. When I forgive somebody, I understand to the best of my ability things from their point of view as well. I've done the best I can to put myself in their shoes, because when I understand how I influence or impact somebody else, I can then also understand how I may have looked in a certain situation. So I guess for me, forgiveness is a three-way street. It has to be given, it has to be accepted, and I have to forgive and accept on my own as well.
Yeah.
If I cannot forgive myself, then I still hold a resentment against myself. And that is another one of the biggest causes of addiction to continue, is a resentment will definitely lead me to drink or drug again. It doesn't mean that I won't sometimes hold a resentment for a short period of time. As long as I'm diligent, though, in doing reflection, I can pick it out a lot faster.
Yeah. Absolutely. That I ended up doing a fast because I felt like I wasn't hearing what I needed to hear in my prayers. And I couldn't remember how to fast, right? I hadn't done it since I was 13, had to call a buddy up and say, hey, how do you do this stuff again? And that's what the word that was coming out for me was the forgiveness. And I remember going, Father, you want me to forgive her? Heck no, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. No way. And I was playing that victim mentality, right? Everything was happening because of her addiction. And it took some time before I like to say it was either God or my angels or my Holy Spirit, or somebody slapped me upside the head and said, it's not her, it's you. You need to forgive you. And I'm a firm, my version of it is it's hard for us to give forgiveness to other individuals if we cannot first forgive ourselves. It's like we can't give our love fully to its full capacity to anybody else unless we love who we are as an individual as well. And it's hard. It is hard to frickin' do um, that. And that is a selfishness, which is a good selfishness, because that selfishness emits all that out to other individuals. And that's just my version. So Amanda, I mean, what where are you seeing your life right now? I mean, has shared a huge part of his journey and what he's seeing. I mean, tell a little bit more about your story, what's opened your eyes, and kind of how you're feeling who you are as an individual today.
I've come to love myself a lot more than I have in the past. I, with it, I had lost myself for a long period of time. And with my last relapse, I had lost all my confidence, my self-control. But with becoming sober and with having faith, I've been able to know that there's a different way of living. And
I think it's been one of the most helpful things.
having support and then being able to have faith in myself again, and having faith in God and his guidance. And
Having that support again, James talks about you being the angel, and I could be completely off here, but it seems like also James has been sent to be your angel. You didn't have support in your life for a long period of time, right? Because of events that happened throughout your life. And now all of a sudden you got this man who finds you, who has so much love and compassion for you, and he's finding that love for himself, but how he also wants to share it, knowing that's something that you've also been missing.
yeah, and that is so true. Like when we had met, I was just starting to have self-confidence again, and then he just showed up and we became friends, and within time being able to care for each other and be able to love each other and make me be able to love myself even more, to know that I actually am loved or be able to feel that kind of love.
Yeah. And that's a good feeling for all of us, right? I mean, to be able to know that there is somebody out there or somebody's that's out there to give us what we're looking for. All of us are we're looking for love, right? That's all that we want. I mean, every single one of us. And I know I guess I can't say I know for a fact because I've not read the Bible all the way through. It's hard for me to read the Bible. All the words just scramble my head the way that they're said and different things. However, I know that love is the answer for everything. It really is. There's nothing negative that comes out of the word love. We have other words in our vocabulary that actually have negative meanings behind it, which a lot of us have no clue, right? I'm one who I don't like the word sorry. I just do not. I've heard it so many times. Nothing's changed. And if you look at the meaning behind it, there's also a lot of negativity behind it. I like to, for me, I'd rather say my apologies. I apologize. Just to change it up. The word but, that's another thing that I've learned too. But is you can use it two ways. You can use to cancel something out. It's like James could be in an argument with you, man, and say, I love you, but, well, he just canceled out I love you by saying
Mhm.
but to say, and I'm really upset with you right now, but I love you. And it's crazy how our words can change, even our just those small little differences and changes can change who we are as individuals and the energy that we put out there. And when we're on our journeys, whatever that journey may be for each one of us, I think these lessons just keep popping up. I've said a few times that when we reach the top of a mountain, we think we've succeeded, but really we've just hit the bottom of another one. It's just there's no finish line, and my listeners have heard me say this many times too. There's no finish line when it comes to bettering ourselves and becoming better people, and there's always something for us to learn, always something. And you guys have taken your past and you've whittled it down to the lessons that you're learning. And you're still finding out, right? I mean, you guys are still new in it. You're still finding out. I've been going 15 years and I'm still feel like I'm new in it because I'm still figuring things out. Something will finally pop in my head that happened 20 years ago and I go, "Oh my gosh." This is why I've looked at this way. So it's crazy how it all comes together. And again, for us who say our higher power is God, and James, you said it not too long ago. We can't do it ourselves. There's no way we can do it ourselves. And it takes a higher power, whatever that is for each individual. However, it also takes other individuals that we don't expect to come into our life to help us along that journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's what's happened with the both of you. I mean, when Brigham said you guys got an amazing story, he wasn't wrong. This is really truly an amazing story. This is something I would think would be cool to see. I don't like saying the Hallmark. That's just too mushy, And I've played background person or extra on a Hallmark movie before, so I could see how kind of mushy it gets. However, I think it's a great story to see that there is something greater than us that brings things together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So where do you guys see your lives going now? I mean, you guys got to have a vision. You've got this strength, and you are. I'm picturing a snowball that's still very small. However, you guys are still rolling it, and I can just see something getting bigger and bigger for the both of you.
That's we've done a lot of talking about what we would hope to have happen in the future. There's been a lot of different ideas, and the idea board, I guess, just keeps getting bigger and bigger. When we first started, our our recovery journey had started back in January of this year, and I found out that I have a passion for cooking. So one of the things that we had talked about was eventually being able to open up a diner um, that would be kind of like a soup kitchen, except it's not just any random person can come in who needs a hot meal. You have to come in, you have to volunteer your time first to work there for an hour or so. And then you have to take a shower. We provide clothes, and then they can go eat their meal that they worked for. And the concept behind that is to not only share something that we have some passion for, but to also help somebody find some value in themselves. Because if I just went out and tried to open another soup kitchen, I would be essentially enabling people who are making the same choices over and over and over. If I'm going to put in the time to try and help somebody like that, I would have it be in a way that's going to help somebody realize that they have to make effort for their life to change.
Mhm.
There's no change towards the positive direction in life without effort. We've had to work our butts off to get where we are, and we've been extremely blessed. We've had a lot of obstacles taken out of our way, but that's because of diligence. That's because of faith. That's because of putting in the work every single day to be a better person, to find a better path. So that's one of the ideas that we've been having. Um, in order to accomplish a lot of things like that, because that would be a huge undertaking. But so in order to accomplish that, we would have to, of course, find the startup capital. We would have to have the time, which means that essentially I'd have to figure out a way to generate some passive income that can allow me to sit down and work on the business plan, to work on contracts, to work on all kinds of things that would be a 40-hour plus a week job, which then I wouldn't really be able to work a regular job. So how would I be able to fund my life while doing that? And there's been a lot of different things that have come up along the way. We've been able to start purchasing a chunk of property that's literally just property, 5 acres. The place that we live in is a rent to own that we kind of just fell into because of a coworker. So there's been meeting with you is been another first stepping stone of a lot of things that I would hope to be able to do. For me personally, at least. I know one of the things I would love to be able to do is work on my speaking, my delivery with things, and be able to go around eventually and do things like TED Talks, um, and really be able to make a profound difference for people is essentially one of my biggest passions and dreams.
Yeah. And I remember you sharing that with me, when I had you guys on the phone when we were first meeting one another. And I believe you guys are both on the right path of doing it. And you've already shared how a lot of things have already happened to you, and to be able to have this idea, because even the idea for me of wanting to start a podcast, and that at first I was taking like this was my idea, and I've come to realize it wasn't my idea. God planted that seed in my head, right? And that it ended up going that direction. And the right people start coming into your life. I mean, I was so blessed to be able, when I started this podcast, I was talking to somebody, he knew a guy that had a studio. We were able to connect. And when I first started this show almost 4 years ago, I had a nice studio, right? And somebody that knew how to do all this stuff. And it gave me that time to learn and do different things, and understand a little bit more about how to interview individuals. And it led to me having a guest on my show, Mallory Roosh, who's well, she's changed her last name. Mallory, I'll just say Mallory right now, who's in St. George, 350 miles south of here. And we've ended up becoming the co-founders of the Healing Utah Success Summit. That all started just coming up with a podcast, right? And other amazing individuals who have been on the show, that's led to other relationships that helps open up doors. And it's hard. You said the word faith. It is tough to have that faith when we're hurting financially. It's really hard to have that faith when we don't know where certain things are going to come from to help us move forward. And I think God gives us those challenges to test us, to see really how much faith we really do have, right? And sometimes He'll throw a stick in our spoke just to kind of wake us up, to flip us off the bike, so we can jump up and go, okay, wait a minute, I got to rethink this. And and you said it earlier too, James, and I love how you put it, that when you're believing and you have the direction that you want to go, things will happen for you in that positive way. And you have to put in the work, like you said, because He's not going to do it for us. We've got to start that process, right? And once we start the process, everything else just kind of seems to start falling into place. And sometimes it takes a little while, so this dream that you guys are talking about, or this vision that you have, I see no reason why that won't come true. If that's something and it may change, right? It may deviate, it may switch a little bit while you're going on that journey, and whichever direction it goes, that's the direction it's meant to go. And as long as you guys keep moving forward, and I think I mentioned this when we talked over the phone, as long as you guys keep working towards it, it's something's going to happen. Something amazing is going to happen.
Mhm.
Because you guys aren't saved and on this journey for no reason at all. You guys have been now. I like to say, I'll put the word angel. I like to say that individuals like yourself and so many others out there that have beaten such a dark part of their lives and have beaten that darkness to come out in the light, you're meant to do something amazing. It's just how I see it. And it's to change other people's lives. And it sounds like during our conversation, that's exactly what you guys want to do. You guys want to be out there helping others in their journey.
Absolutely. That's I've known a lot of people who have had their lives, whether they call themselves Wiccan or Satanists or practice voodoo, but when I talk with these people, a lot of them really have no clue what it is to truly sell their soul and how void that feels. And those are some of the people who I would really hope to be able to influence. It's when I think about what I did when I was 14, it it hurts, but it also gives me a lot of hope because for a lot of the things that I've done since then, everything that I've gotten to experience now just in the last 8 months blows all of that out of the water. Like none of those things can compare from feeling like there's no hope at all. Like I thought when I made my deals, I thought I wasn't going to be condemned until I died. I didn't realize until after I decided to essentially take my soul back so that I can give it to God. I didn't think that was possible, but I learned that it is. It is very possible as long as there's a desire, and that's I've mentioned before how uh, actually about 2 years ago I was having to do a little bit of jail time on an old case, and when I came out, I was telling Amanda that my entire life I felt like I was meant for something huge. Like I don't know what, I don't know why, when, where, or how, but that I was meant for something more, and I had no clue how to find it. I had no clue how to do any of that. But now going through these steps, putting in the work, having that blind faith has opened up more possibilities and more connections, just like with you, of stepping stones, ways that I can start actually believing it's possible. I might not know how to do these things, but that doesn't mean that somebody else does not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've experienced a lot of different things in my life, but all these kinds of ventures or ideas that I would love to be able to put into motion, I've never really experienced how they work. I love the feeling that I get when I gear my heart and my mind towards them. So I have to trust that somebody, God in my case, will show me how and put me where I need to be. All I have to do is be willing to answer.
Yeah. Amen. And it'll happen. It will definitely happen. I don't another word I'm working on getting rid of my vocabulary is believe. And the reason why is because the word lie is in believe. You know, I like to use my version. My version is I see that happening for you guys. And my gosh, 2 years ago you saw it, you visioned it. That vision came from somewhere, right? Um, I think a lot of things that we see in our head or certain things, I think, again, that's just another message from a power greater than us, whether it's our Holy Spirit, our angels, or God or Jesus, whoever it may be. But that those messages come from somewhere, definitely. So, I mean, these hours go by so quick. We've been into this just about almost an hour already. I usually like to ask the guests at the end to share something. I mean, if there's something, some kind of good, feel good something that you can share with our listeners, what would that be for the both of you?
Uh, I think one of the biggest things that I can always advise and testify on that truly works is no matter how dark it seems, there is a silver lining. And with that silver lining, we can always find a way out. We just cannot let go of the side of that silver lining.
That's the light.
Yeah. There's a lesson in everything. And more often than not, the lesson is love and forgiveness. You know, I used to think that there's no way that anybody could love somebody like me who's done the things that I've done. And the truth be told, nobody really knows the things that I've done unless I tell them.
Mhm.
All that all that really matters is what I do with my life now because of what I've learned from the things that I've done, things that I've been through, you know, and to be able to love myself is one of the greatest gifts that I've been given in this journey. I spent so much of my life creating what I always used to perceive to be a monster and was proud of it for a long time. Now I find myself to be a person who does his best to be compassionate. And compassion is a beautiful word, you know, because to me, it has a combination of love, grace, mercy, and forgiveness all in one.
Yeah. Very, very well put. Do you want to add to that, Amanda, or are you just kind of dittoing off of what he said?
Um, I was kind of off of what he said. And just to be able to love yourself and forgive yourself so that you'd be able to love and forgive others.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. And also keep in mind that higher power, right? It's that higher power comes first. And I'm so grateful for my journey, because now things that I thought came first, I know really didn't come first at all. My higher power comes first because everything goes through there. Everything that happens comes through that, whether it's a closed door, an open door, whatever the lesson may be, it all comes down. It all starts right there, basically. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, guys, again, my gosh, thank you for your time and thank you for being vulnerable, right? Just like at the start of the show, I talk about the voices. It is voices like yourself and so many other guests that come on this show to use their voice and be vulnerable and open up and share something that they're not proud of from their past to who they are today, because anybody can change and it's never too late. You guys are starting your journey still at a fairly young age. My gosh, I didn't even figure out what my why was until 4 years ago, in my late 50s. Now I'm in my 60s and now my vision is so clear of where I want to go. And sometimes I'm still confused here and there. However, I'm now enjoying the process. And instead of trying to force things, I just allow life to happen and see which direction. Because I know as long as I go on that right path and you guys are doing the same thing, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out. Because I joke sometimes, and I've even said this in some of my public speaking, that whenever I decided to take over the steering wheel, I end up going in a ditch or crashing into a wall. And that's kind of like my wake up call again, right? It's like, okay, never mind. My hands are off the wheel, just because it's almost like if your car's out of alignment, whether it goes to the left or go to the right, and you're like, no, what do you do? No, no, this is the direction we're supposed to go. And you keep trying to force it. And as soon as we do, we're off somewhere we're not supposed to be. Yeah. So guys, thank you so much. Really seriously, thank you so much for your time. You guys got an amazing story. And again, I see you guys heading in the right direction. And congratulations on your 8 months. I mean, especially today
Thank
on the 13th and doing the show. I mean, this is really cool. So, guys, we're going to leave it with this, man. Again, thank you, guys. Thank you to all our guests, all our past guests, past sponsors. Man, we couldn't do this without you, and mostly thank you to all your listeners. You guys are the ones that are continuously keeping this show going. I really do appreciate every single one of you for your support, and it's great to go to an event where somebody comes up to me. I just want to say thank you to y'all for those who come up to me when I'm at an event and say, "Hey, thank you for doing your show. I heard this show. I heard these guests. It was an amazing. It's something I needed to hear exactly that day, and that's exactly why we do this show." So remember, I love y'all. And we're going to leave you with this. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.